Hello, Drunkduckers! I'm Ozone Ocean, and with me is Tatsurin and Baines. Hello.
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 And today we're recording the Quackcast. Theme song. And that was our theme music. Okay, so now we're the subject of this Quackcast is
tell them what's going to happen, and then let it happen, and then tell them it has happened.
It's full on narration all the time, which is appropriate because we're talking about Greek myths.
Yes, the most enduring stories in our world culture, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know, because we have all different cultures that we draw from. So I'd say for the Western world, but yeah, I mean we have Chinese myths that are just as old, and Indian and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, and even older than that, you have like Egyptian ones, and you have, like I said in the videocast, Mesopotamian ones, and a whole lot more. So
we do.
The Greeks are the new kids, they're the upstarts.
Yeah. Generally, I mean, yeah, the Greeks are pretty old, but anyone that says that they are like the oldest is lying to you and is probably far right, and keep your distance.
Oh, there's all sorts.
That all describes me. That's why I said it. That's
Oh my God, Baines! Oh, you'll get us cancelled. Okay, all right. Well, next up we have to talk about the featured comic. So, the featured comic is not an old myth. It is a new story. It's all about musicians. A new myth. So it's all about musicians, and it is Cork and Blotto. So I'm going to tell you about Cork and Blotto now. This is Ozone Ocean, and my feature for the week was Cork and Blotto. This is an amazing musical-themed comic about the destined meeting of Blotto with Cork and the musical magic they made together. Blotto is stuck playing guitar for a boring Christian band in a church, lorded over by a busy, bossy harridan of a band leader. And when he studies at music school, the theory drives him batty. Things aren't going well for him and his passion, till a chance meeting with Cork, a creative guy of similar temperament and taste. They hit it off right away, and just like that, the songs start flowing. Two halves of the same creative soul. Cork and Blotto is a slice of life comedy comic about music and inspiration. The art is full colour and heavily stylized in a very cartoony way. It really does illustrate visibly the feeling of the music and the fun that they're having playing it when you look at the artwork. And they're a fun little pair because they're a couple of grungy, screw-uppy kind of people compared to everyone else who's a bit more conventional than them, a bit more ordinary. So they're an interesting pair of unusual people who have met up and found kindred spirits, I should say. And it's just a very fun comic, a lot of pages to look at, so it's well worth getting into. Cork and Blotto, I recommend it. And this comic is by Steva Blotto, and it's rated M for mature. That was our little featured comic, Cork and Blotto. Okay, so after Cork and Blotto, have the featured music. This week, Gummalus has given us the theme On the Edge, a fantastic little Star Trek fan comic that's based on a little roleplay game that Gummalus, Baines, Tance and I do weekly, where with our little characters all doing different things. So this is a Borg character singing a show tune in a very ridiculous, funny way. I hope you enjoy it, the weirdness of it, and get into it. And yeah, check out the little comic. All right, take it away, Gummels, with your theme to On the Edge.
There's no people like show people. They smile when they are low. Yesterday they told you you would not go far. That night you open and there you are. Next day on your dressing room they've hung a star. Let's go on with the show. The costumes, the scenery, the makeup, the props, the audience that lifts you when you're down, the headaches, the heartaches, the backaches, the flops, the sheriff who'll escort you out of town, the opening when your heart beats like a drum, the closing when the customers don't come. There's no business like show business. Like no business I know. Everything about it is appealing. Everything that traffic will allow. Nowhere could you get that happy feeling when you are stealing that extra bow. There's no people like show people. They smile when they are low. Even with a turkey that you know will fold, you may be stranded out in the cold, but still you wouldn't change it for a sack of gold. Let's go on with the show. Let's go on with the... Resistance is futile.
That was Gummels' theme. I hope you enjoyed that. To a comic called On the Edge, which is not actually a comic, it's more a written story with some images that illustrate it, mostly done by Baines and Gene and one or two by me. So have a look at it, read it, and have a squiz. All right. Now, we're going to talk about our favourite Greek myths. So... see,
First of all, you guys have a vast education in Greek myths, both of you? I already know the answer, I think.
No, I don't. I loved them when I was a little chap. Because
collections.
No, I had books on astronomy, and I loved looking at the photos of stars and planets. And then I got deeper into it and started looking up, the information about the constellations and how they got their names. And these astronomy books also had the myths that the constellations and the planets and things were named after. So that's how I got into it. And then I would want to read further and want to find out more. So in dribs and drabs, and of course you see all those the silly TV shows and movies. And when I was little, it was Clash of the Titans and all these other great Ray Harryhausen movies with all the little special effects that I loved. So yeah, you watch those and you gradually learn more and more, and it becomes cumulative. And of course all the fantastic stories about Hercules or Heracles and Perseus and all those kind of characters, which are just, you have to read about Pegasus. And these days people have different routes into that. I think there's this character called Percy something.
Perseus?
Not Perseus, but just Percy and the, I don't know, the lightning something other.
Oh.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I saw the movie at least.
It's young adult stuff, and there was a time when kids grew up with like Hercules, the legendary journeys with Kevin Sorbo, and they got into the Greek mystery that way. And some of them would have gotten into it through the Hercules version from Disney. So everyone has their different routes into it, and all of them are valid. Right. Even no matter how accurate or inaccurate they are, because it all sort of leads down to the same path, doesn't it? So, I mean, how did you first get into it, Baines?
I wouldn't even have remembered Clash of the Titans, but to hear you mention it, it's like, yeah, of course. Even though I've never seen the movie, We had the toys, and I saw footage on about Harryhausen special effects and everything. And then, of course, later it would be comic book characters, which really were, I guess, Norse mythology with Thor and Odin and all that stuff. So it'd be like that kind of very, very loosely based on kind of versions. It would just be sort of, in bits and pieces in pop culture. I sort of heard and read more about them later through the lens of kind of like psychology and I don't know if I was hearing the right versions of these stories, if you could even say there is a right version, but
oh no.
Yeah, then I got a little more interested hearing about this and thinking about the sort of symbolism of a lot of these stories and the many, many levels of insight into our behavior. And then I heard you guys talk about it, and you know so much more than me. I'm like, okay, I just know very, very little, very, very, very little personally. That's it.
Well, I have to say about this, as someone who was taught mythology in school, like mythology is a regular course in Greek mandatory education. So we actually are taught these things. I have to say that anyone who says that, oh, I have a full grasp of Greek mythology, either has just started and has no idea what they're in for, or is lying. So, and why am I saying this? Because the stories and the myths are so vast that even when you actually study them, like in college or for a higher level degree, you can only be sure about the stuff that you have studied, and you always know that there are stories that you haven't read, versions, variations, different connections between characters. And when I say character, I mean all, deities, demigods, mortals, they all mix and match depending on the region. So someone that says, I have a grasp of Greek mythology, but, up to a point, that's the guy or girl or whoever that you want to answer you stuff. Because they will just set you on a path rather than tell you that this is the only way, this is the only version of this story, that so.
Oh yeah, there's the whole Dunning-Kruger
that
effect.
person who says that is flying too close to the sun. Sorry.
I was just going to say as well, the whole getting into Greek mythology from Norse mythology, there's a fantastic precedent to that because there's the days of the week. And the days of the week are, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or whatever. See, these days are named after the Norse gods. And why are they named after the Norse gods? Well, they're only named after the Norse gods in English because originally they were named after the Roman gods. And, of course, the Roman gods are based on the Greek gods. So the Norse god names of these days are only translations of the Roman gods.
Yeah.
Which is something
and
that
ironically,
people don't realize.
The names that we have for our days of the week are like the most boring. Literally first, second, third, fourth. Like we don't actually have names. It's
funny that way. And I say Norse gods, and of course I mean Germanic gods because these these come from to us from the Saxon religion. So they're all part of the same group. But so these were the ones that the Saxon or Germanic people, were able to understand. But say in Germany, they too have these names of the week that are based on those gods. But for the middle day, for Wednesday, Woden, the king of the gods, they name it Mittag, I think, or Mittwoch, which just means midweek. So again, there's the same kind of thing, Tans. Mid-watch. So yeah, everyone bows down to practicality in the end. But that is interesting. So in the Greek days, it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
More or less, yeah. I mean, you basically we start with second, like second, third, fourth, fifth, because the first day is Sunday, which is the one day that we don't have, like, it's not called first, it is called literally the day of the Lord, which is Kyriaki. So Kyrios is Lord, so Kyriaki is the day of the Lord. And then we have second day, third, and you start, with Monday and all that. And then you have Friday that for some reason diverges and it's the day, one day before Saturday.
That's a good name for it, because Friday is that day. You go Friday.
Yeah.
This is another day. This is the day before I have my weekend. So.
Yeah. Most likely, yeah. And then we have Sabbath, which is basically Sabbath. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, Byzantine era was a massive, period for Greece. So you got massively Christianized then. I mean, you created Christianity.
Oh, we didn't wait for Byzantium. No. We were Christianized as early as like 60 AD. So we really were first in line.
Wow, you had good old Constantine as well, and that was all.
A lot later. Like we already were experienced Christians by then. So, which is basically, and I'm saying it like this, like a Greek person probably would laugh with me, because one of the biggest talking points of the Orthodox Christian Church, and especially the Greek Orthodox Christian Church, is that we are the OG, the ones that have the Gospels in the original language. Therefore, we have the most authentic version, and we haven't basically altered practice since those times. So everyone else is basically heretics. So yeah, there you go. The one truth, guys, get it here. So,
but we're going for earlier religion now with the Greek mythology. What we were saying before about them being a lot of different versions and no right version is interesting, because I came across that a while ago with the whole Medusa myth, and I was looking into that because there was the people going on about, she was actually a rape fiction who was punished, and we've all got it wrong, which was, of course, that's nothing to do with the myths at all. That's a modern kind of conception of Ovid, who was who wrote, he was a Roman who wrote, many, like a couple of centuries after that whole myth was created in Greece. But he didn't write in exactly that way. This is just an interpretation of him. That Medusa was a punished priestess because of an illicit affair she had, and that was his idea.
Mm-hmm.
But the earlier myths of Medusa, which are really, when you actually research this, you can, like when I say research, you can actually research, not just doing the readings, because like all the notes and stuff like that, because this is so well studied, the notes are easy to find, like the references are easy to find, and then you can find all the original different myths and different sources for the Medusa myths, because people have translated them all, so it's very easy to find all the different sources. And there's nothing at all about her being a priestess in any of the myths apart from Ovid. So she never was that. But the stories about Medusa are amazing. Like at the time, like when it became like the Medusa myth, and she was a Titan and all this, people had, I'm talking about in ancient Greece, people already had theories about, what was she really? What is this myth based on? Like, that's the fascinating thing. Like, at the time in ancient Greece, people had ideas about where she came from. And we think this is only a modern thing that people sort of imagine that, oh, what was this thing really based on? But people back then were already having these ideas, and they had these ideas like, oh, she used to be this powerful chieftain of this rival group, and she was captured and all this kind of, and she was killed off in a secret way or whatever, and there was all these kind of stories that people are imagining what she was based on. So it was incredible. Anyway, sorry, Tance.
Yeah. Especially when it comes to Medusa, she was a gorgon, and she has always been a gorgon. She was the only mortal sister of 3 sisters, if I'm not mistaken. And she definitely was never pretty. She was always a monster. Like the original myth is that.
She was born that way.
Yeah. She was born that way, and she was beautiful on the inside. No, she wasn't. She was a bully.
She's meant to be a monster.
A variation I would have heard was that, now that you mention it, I remember like this idea that she was beautiful and she was transformed. I guess that makes it more contrasty kind of story.
Yeah. The thing is, it's not that these myths didn't exist. It's just that this particular myth was not that. But there was such a thing. Like, Ovid was basically writing fan fiction with those characters. And he was not the only one. There were many that were writing versions of pre-existing myths. The thing is that the one that was established in Greece, at least until Ovid, if not throughout, was that she was a gorgon, and she just happened to be the only one that was mortal from her sisters, and because she was a beast and she was basically a monster that brutalized everybody, and your usual monster trick. She was a good candidate for this demigod hero to take care of the problem, as with a lot of other monsters in Greek mythology. They are there basically as a big bad for the hero to take down. And sometimes they also represent certain conditions that have been found to coincide, like lots of earthquakes in a particular period, or flooding, or plague, and they are represented in those kinds of monsters that are being taken down by the usually demigods. Usually that's what happens. Yeah. But beyond that, we have our fair share of original fair lady turned into a monster because she angered the wrong goddess stories. So yeah, that's a thing. It's not that it's not a thing. Yeah.
And so, I mean, the story, or was it Perseus who slayed Medusa? Is that right, or am I?
I think it's Perseus, yeah.
But there was a reason he had to slay her, because he had to use her head as a weapon against something.
I think that this was a happy coincidence later, because he was ambushed by his really nasty, murderous uncle, I think it was, that wanted to keep the throne, because Perseus was the child of Daphne and Zeus. So Daphne was the girl with the golden rain.
The golden shower that impregnated her.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
I didn't want to be the one to say it, right? But the myth goes that also it was his grandfather. No, it wasn't. Okay. Sorry, I got it straight. So her father, Daphne's father, got this prophecy from Delphi that his grandson would kill him. So he got super, super scared, and then he locked his daughter like in the basement or something, so that she would never find a guy and procreate. So that was his solution for this. So the problem, though, was that Zeus had already seen her, and she was gorgeous and all of that. And he, like, slid into her room that had no doors and just like a small window so that, she could be fed and stuff like that. So he slid into her room in the form of golden rain, because, of course, gold, he was tacky. And that was the only way that he could get in and all of that. And then he became this handsome guy, and she was starved for attention, clearly. So it wasn't really that hard to get down with her. And so her father didn't catch that until the baby was literally born and cried. And he got really super pissed because the baby was a boy. And so he grabbed, but the daughter told him that Zeus came into her room. And so he didn't want to kill the baby because it was a known fact that if you killed Zeus's bastards, he came and killed you too, in very creative ways. So he was, the whole point was to survive, so he didn't want to do that. And the other thing, the next best thing that he found to do was to seal baby and mom in a box and ship them off, drop them into the sea. So hopefully, they would die in the sea, but he wouldn't have done it, logic, whatever. Yeah. And then they got fished out by this fisherman who helped her raise Perseus, the baby. And then he has to do certain things, and he has to protect his mom from this guy that wants to marry her, and he happens to be the king or some kind of lord in the area, and he sends him to do great deeds. And because he's a young kid, excitable, he says, I'm gonna go do it, I'm gonna go become a hero, and then I will be able to protect my mom. And that's why he goes to kill Medusa. And yeah.
Well, an interesting thing. I mean, that has this really cool reflection down through the centuries, because in the night it became, for some reason, traditional for people to have a Medusa badge on helmets and stuff like that, in order to, I don't know, scare your enemies or like show you've got like protection or something like that. So this is especially like French helmets would have this in the 19th century and maybe earlier, and even modern firefighter helmets, like in the early 19th century, would have Medusa badges on them. So that's a pretty interesting thing.
Yeah, there is a reason for that, because so Perseus didn't know how to go slay the Medusa, because the moment that he would lay eyes on her, he would turn to stone. So Athena, who has been known to basically support all demigods and all, kids that have to struggle because it is complicated in their families, she appears to him, and because he treats her very kindly when she's in disguise, because she likes to do that, she decides to help him consistently, and she gives him this mirror and tells him how to kill Medusa, basically to approach her while she's sleeping and look at her through the mirror and cut off her head. So it is a very anticlimactic thing because he does not battle her. He literally sneaks up on her and kills her. Takes the head, puts it into a bag without looking, seals the bag, leaves. And not even the immortal sisters understood what happened until they woke up and saw like headless sister lying there. So he returns home with a bag of Medusa head to this dude that had been completely sexually harassing his mom. And he says, yeah, I'm back. I killed the Medusa, all of that. And he says, prove it. Do you have her head? And he says, of course I do. Here it is. And he takes it out. And of course, the bad guy turns to stone. So, because the head still works. Doesn't matter that Medusa is dead. And he did this trick with the whole army, basically, by leading his side of the army. That's a long story. I'm not going to spend the entire cast talking about Perseus, although I really like him. He's my favorite demigod hero. And he goes against this city that is being, oppressed by this tyrant, and basically takes it easily because he has the Medusa head, and every bad guy turns to stone. And after that happens, he gives this head to Athena as his tribute and thanks. And Athena slaps that bad boy on her shield, and from then on, it is Athena that has the Medusa head and turns you into stone if you attack her. And that's the ultimate sign of protection, and that's why a lot of armies adopted it as a sculpture.
Oh.
Well, yeah, it's one of the
I can
fascinating
see why
things.
he's a hero in Clash of the Titans and stuff. Sorry again, Ross. Go ahead.
Oh no, he's a fantastic hero. But these things have these what's the freaking word? They have reflections down through the ages, like say modern American in modern American warfare, the most powerful radar system is the Aegis system. And that's it detects incoming missiles or whatever, or spots everything, and then you can just shoot anything down from anywhere because they've got the Aegis, which is the ultimate protection, and that comes, of course, from another Greek myth. That was I think Zeus killing another Titan and using their hide as a shield or something like that. And
guess who got that as well afterwards?
Did Perseus get it? Oh, Athena. Okay. She's a Greek superhero.
She has all the gadgets. Like she has all the OP armor equipped.
Fully
She's
equipped.
the one. Yeah. But yeah, it's not only that. It's like if you really look at beyond the cool stories, if you look at the heroes of Greek mythology, they all have, except Perseus, they all have downfalls because they all represent a human vice that can be the downfall of an otherwise very robust, very good, very promising person. Like, for example, Hercules in Greece, his vice is anger, rage. Like he flies into rage that makes him blind to anything. And that's his biggest problem. And basically that's what kills him in the end. He starts with flying into a maddening rage and killing off his original family. Then he flies into different rages and gets himself into trouble. Throughout his life until the very end, where he flies into a rage, kills this centaur. The centaur convinces his late, like I think second wife, or not third, that he will eventually cheat on her. So in order to keep him faithful, she should take the centaur's blood and coat this chiton, this like tunic that Heracles had, and that would make him faithful. And she was an idiot and believed that. So she does this, and then he dies because he basically catches fire that cannot be put out. And that was the end of this centaur that he killed because of rage. And then you have Theseus, and his vice is greed and not being upright. Like he cheats a lot of things and people. And the more he grows old, the more he does it, until again he meets his demise. And then you have Bellerophon, the guy that had the Pegasus, and his vice is arrogance. Because the way he dies is that he feels that he has done so many things, he's so awesome and bombastic, that he deserves a place in Olympus. And he rides the Pegasus up to Olympus, and that pisses off Zeus, and he basically strikes him down. That sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Except Perseus. Perseus is the only one that has no vice. He is the purest Greek hero, and he's the only one that has a nice, calm rest of his life. Like he doesn't get a violent death.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, shares such similarities when you're telling the Perseus story, his childhood and stuff. It made me think of. I was thinking of Achilles with the heel, but I think I was thinking of Oedipus, who was like sort of cast out as well, and obviously he is a much bleaker story than.
Terrible story. Oh.
Yeah. I mean, ironically, Perseus also kills his grandfather by mistake, but it's a completely stupid death, because unlike Oedipus that killed his mom and all of that, or not killed his mom. Sorry, he killed his dad and married his mom. Perseus didn't do any of that, but he became king of this place that he liberated and all of that. Living really well. He was a very fair king. All of that. He also liked to throw the discus. That was his hobby. And he competed with other discus throwers, and it was a huge event. And this other king from this other city came to watch. And then the wind caught the discus, and basically it hit the old guy in the head, and he died on the spot. And that was his grandfather. That was how it happened.
And that's such a pointless kind of story that you think maybe that could have been based on a real incident.
Could be.
Because
totally.
Why else would they come up with something as silly as that? This stuff is the dumbest stories are often the ones that are based on truth, which is weird.
And also there's this other thing, that the more you try to avoid a prophecy, the more your actions make it come true. And that is a general theme in mythology. If you try to oppose your fate, that's when you seal it. If you want to change your fate, you have to go through different paths. Like actually ask, okay, I don't like this fate. How can we change this thing?
Petition the gods directly.
Yeah, and or ask for ways to actually actively change your fate, which is an interesting pattern as well.
So since you're talking about this and here, there's a couple that I would love to ask you about actually. So there's someone marries Hades. In this version of the story that I heard, he's god of the underworld or of the dead or something, a scary figure, but not actually scary figure. So someone marries him and she's not allowed to look at him and see that he actually looks pretty good. Do I have this right?
Okay, you want that's not Hades. That's Eros and Psyche, I think.
Yes.
And that's an awesome story. Again, basically an Eldritch deity because Eros. So I think equivalent is Cupid, but totally not Cupid.
Eros, the god of love, or something.
Yeah, he's the god of love, but consider that the original myth is that he was a god created or pre-existing together with chaos, the god of chaos. So, and again, there is, of course, the idea that he's also the son of Aphrodite, but he is also a pre-existing deity, and these things totally coexist. Don't ask me why, but they do. So that's and all of the gods are afraid of Eros because he can literally make anyone fall in love with anybody else, and that makes for a lot of shenanigans. And so you don't really want to piss him off. But the myth, and I'll say it quickly to see if that rings a bell. There was this princess that was super, super gorgeous, and to the point that her subjects started worshipping her as Aphrodite instead of Aphrodite, which is like the worst thing you can do.
Yes.
Aphrodite got super pissed and also jealous because, she was maybe prettier. So,
Tans, careful.
Maybe a little more humble, which is attractive.
yeah. So she basically got super pissed, and at the same time, an oracle freaked out because the oracle felt the rage from Aphrodite and also said that because she has been cursed to marry a monster. So, of course, nobody dared approach her and all of that. And she decided to kill herself. Or, there are different versions of how this happened. But she ends up in the sea. And Eros saves her because he likes her. She catches his eye. And he takes her to his palace that is probably in the underworld, but we don't really know for sure. But it is like this gorgeous palace. It has amazing gardens. Think Beauty and the Beast with the castle in the original Hans Christian Andersen story. It is an amazing place. Nobody that you can see, but everybody serves you while invisible. And she is told that she is now married to the owner of the castle, but she cannot ask to look at him, and she should not try to see him and look at his face. And beyond that, anything she wants, hers, all of that. She is the lady of the castle, blah blah blah. So when her sisters come to visit, they get super jealous because she's living in the super, super lap of luxury.
As you were telling the story, it rang a bell that this is what it was about, was the sisters.
Okay.
Yeah, so go ahead. This is great.
And they say, oh, but have you seen him? I bet that he's a hideous monster and he's super shy because of this. And you will totally not be happy knowing that you're married to this. Or are you like a coward that doesn't want to see? Anyway, they convinced her to go and look. And so she waited when Eros returns, and he is he comes in and out like a gust of wind because of course he is a winged god, because he is a god of the underworld basically, but nobody admits to that. But anyway, and he goes to sleep. So she approaches with a lamp very, very carefully, tiptoes in, to look at him, and finally casts some light on him. And of course, because he's sleeping, he's not invisible anymore. And he, of course, is gorgeous, drop dead gorgeous. And she has this amazing, she's stricken with how gorgeous he is. And she starts shaking because, oh my God, what a bodacious babe. And because she's shaking, some of the oil dripped on him and burned him. And so he got startled and flew off to his mom, who happens to be Aphrodite and has a grudge against this daughter-in-law.
Oh, man.
and she, of course, he didn't really want to do anything bad to happen to her. But Aphrodite finds this as an excuse, imprisons Eros in her palace, and says, I am now going to punish this daughter-in-law for assaulting my precious son. And she basically slam dunks her down into the underworld. So, yeah.
That's so nasty.
What?
I mean, it's so nasty. Maybe if you would have just let her look at him, it would have been...
Yeah. The thing is that Eros is super pissed because he didn't want anything to happen to her.
Yeah.
And he tells her that, I'm going to pay you back, Mom, for this. And he does later in other myths. Okay. They don't have... He's not necessarily an obedient son. Let's put it that way. And
is she salvaged somehow? And
then it is Psyche's moment to shine, because now that she has seen him, she wants him, and she asks Hades, "Okay, I need to go back to Eros. How do I do this?" And Hades says, "Look, you are not dead. I mean, it's not your time. Basically, don't involve me in her dealings. Ask her." So Aphrodite says, okay, if you want to win my son back, son is already won, but let's not mention that. Do these 3 great feats. And so she goes through her own set of tasks that she has to do, and definitely does them, and Eros eventually helps her, and they basically reunite, and they live happily ever after.
Right.
And that's them.
Hooray!
And they basically both flip off Aphrodite, but we don't talk about that very much.
Well, this shows up in a lot of these stories. It's the parents and the lover, or the parents and the spouse, the parents-in-law, mother-in-law thing. You see that play out in these stories. Regularly, yeah. So that's interesting. And like the sort of destructive power of gossip. I've had girlfriends who their friends like screwed it all up.
Yeah.
In that way. So that story I found relatable.
It really does. And that thing that you mentioned about parents not being what they should, and couples being more bonded together, that again does come up in other myths. One of my favorite myths is Admetos and Alcestis. Alcestis, I don't know how it is pronounced in English. I'm so sorry. Admetus and Alcestis, whatever.
Narcissus?
No. Narcissus is a story that pisses me off.
Yes.
But yes. So Admetus married Alcestis. And they were super, super loving, but they got an oracle to tell them that the husband, let's say, the Admetus, was cursed and that he would die very young. And that was a devastating news and all that. So one of the gods, I don't remember who, managed to get the fates drunk to help them. And because they were, happy hour partying, they said, okay, if someone takes the place of Admetus in the underworld, he can go on living and be with his wife and all that. So Admetus thought that his parents, that were very elderly and they were going to die anyway, one of them would offer to go down to the other world just a little sooner. But they both refused. and so when that happens, Alcestis says, I'll go. And she dies in his place. And that devastates him. And he basically is ready to follow her into the underworld. So Persephone, who is a sap, she gets touched by stories so easily. She and Hades, if you make them identify with your problem, they will try to help you. I love that about them both.
Nice.
And Persephone said, "Oh no, this shouldn't happen. What a loving couple, all of that." And she said, "Enough of that. I'll just fetch you back up and consider it my wedding gift that I never gave you." And she is returned to Admetus. And the technicality is that we can't have one more of you earlier. So since the guy is about to commit suicide, we will have a logistics issue. So, get your wife back. Thank you. See you a lot later.
And if there's time, the story of, I don't know if this is connected to Narcissus or someone else, but it's the story of Echo.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
That's why I really hate Narcissus. He's such a insert female dog word here.
Well, obviously his namesake is
Yeah, and that is an excellent. He lent his name to the exact disorder that he should, because he was super gorgeous and the handsomest man alive, and he was not only in love with himself, but his hobby was to downput anyone that had a crush on him, and communicated that to him, in the sense of, how dare you that are an ugly, fugly, whatever, approach, and you're disgusting, nobody, not even a cow would want you, that sort of thing. And he did that to men and women alike, because men also wanted to have a relationship with him. And everyone, he was so scathing that the people afterwards could not survive. They either committed suicide or they just withered away. That's how terrible he was. So I think it was either Athena or one of the other main goddesses that got super pissed. Who do you think you are, you little blip? And that happened with Echo, because Echo was this nymph that she was cursed by Hera to only repeat what she has just been told. Hence, Echo.
Mm-hmm.
And she was so much in love with Narcissus that she managed to make it so that she could tell him that she loved him. And that was a whole feat, because, of course, someone had to first tell her certain things and all that.
Yeah.
And then he demolishes her to the point that she cannot eat or drink, and she withers away, and the only thing that is left is her voice that echoes. So when you tell her something, you hear her voice respond to you.
Yeah.
Hence we have Echo. And that's Narcissus's fault. So the goddess got pissed off and said, okay, you think you are all that? All right. You are going to get the exact same fate. So he saw his reflection in a river. he was so enthralled with it that he tried to basically make love to his reflection in the river.
Yeah,
And
that's
he,
I think the most famous part of this.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah, because he was bizarre, right?
yeah.
So, but of course, then there are two versions. One is that he drowned because he was an idiot, or the second is that he felt because his reflection would not respond to him. I told you he's a brick. Because his reflection would not respond to him, he felt that he was rejected, and then he also didn't drink and didn't eat, trying to woo
Withered
his
away.
reflection. Yeah, until he died.
Got his own thing back at
Yeah.
him. I mean, these myths it's so much about like jealousy and hubris. Like all these sort of out of balance things, all these kind of lessons for just,
Yeah.
navigating life and
A
like
lot.
on a deep level, how to exist and how like all the sort of pitfalls of that.
Yes, yes.
I mean, one of the reasons they carry on down the centuries, down the millennia, was because a lot of these stories were oral, transmitted orally rather than written down, and things that have some kind of like resonance. Oh my god, that was the word I've been trying to think of for ages. They have some kind of resonance with people are the ones that are the most remembered and the most easily
Right, that makes
transmitted.
sense.
So if people can relate to them, then they will continue. If they're so boring that they just have to be written down in a scripture, well, you can only remember them if they're written down.
Exactly.
Yeah, because these things have a human factor that makes them more memorable. Maybe they did once, because they had solid religions around each, like people would have like just religions around one particular aspect of a deity, because had soldiers and all this kind of thing, and like the Romans, they'd only be like for the soldiers, they'd only have Mithras, I think, something like that. That was like a female version of Athena, that would be their thing. And the Greeks were the same in that, you wouldn't worship all the gods simultaneously. You'd only have like one or two, and they wouldn't like worship these gods in terms of, yes, there's this myth and this myth and this myth. They would be worshipping them in a more kind of structured way, like, here's my devotion, and here's this thing that I have to do in order to have this appeal to the gods and this. So it's a very different way that we relate to them versus how the Greek people, the ancient Greeks, related to their gods, isn't it, Tance? I mean, do you know a bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, you had to worship all the gods, at least the main ones, the Olympians, the 12. You had to do like a sacrifice, and when I say sacrifice, could be like pouring wine on an altar, right? Not necessarily killing an animal, but you were always dedicated to one, and that was very specific to who you were in profession, in whether you were a woman or a man or an athlete or what have you. I mean, depending on the biggest focus of your life, you also tended to have a special dedication, that this God would be your patron, this God would be your protector.
Like Catholics and their saints. You have saints of particular occupations.
Yeah, same with
Barbara for the mines, or whatever.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. That's basically how it was. So you would have for example, in every house you would have an altar to Hestia, that is the goddess of the household, although she is not an Olympian. And you would have married women always worshipped Hera, or they feared, the worst, that sort of thing. But beyond that, the myths are made to teach you how not to be a bad person, like how not to be a douche.
Yeah,
But yeah,
how to live and deal with and you need certain things for certain.
exactly. Like, for example, with Narcissus, it is a given that he is the most gorgeous man alive, but that doesn't make him any less repulsive. And that is the biggest takeaway for me. It's that you need a lot more than just looks
Mhm.
to actually be worthwhile.
Yeah.
So, which is the prettiest god? I've always thought the prettiest god would be Apollo.
Yeah.
I mean, for a man. For a woman, probably Aphrodite.
I thought it was Adonis.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay,
depends on your
Adonis,
taste.
yeah. Wow.
There's several.
Yeah, Adonis is not a god though. So if we go with a god, I would say Apollo is like top tier. He's the sun god, or one of the sun. We have two sun gods, so yeah. We also have Helios that minds his own business, but we also have Apollo that doesn't. So
It's very interesting stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Well, damn it, the call's gonna end. This is the
Yes.
god of the Quackcast, which is Google. It's gonna kick us off.
Quackcast.
So all hail the mighty Google god.
Yes.
Googus. Googly.
Google
He's a
it.
googly
Very
eyes.
Roman.
Googus. Alright. Bye-bye, people.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Quackcast 699.
Thank you.